20th annual Curb Hunger Food Drive is now concluded. Almost 88,000 pounds of food was donated during the 10-day drive. What was special about that drive is that it was really about fresh food. It was about encouraging Londoners any way they could, either by donating online so the food bank could buy fresh food, or by planting a row of vegetables in their backyard. There's places like Plant a Row and Grow a Row. There are places like community gardens. We're seeing small greenhouses and other things emerge through the city. And Londoners were just encouraged to start thinking more and more about a new way of looking at food in this city. It's not been easy. I mean, for years, the food bank has been around for almost 40 years, but even way back at its beginning, there were many dedicated Londoners and London organizations that were trying to get people to focus on the land beneath their feet, the ability to be able to grow our own. It was important. All sorts of people were growing food in their backyards, and they were trying to lobby city council and other organizations to begin thinking more and more about urban farming, growing food within the city and not just looking at the food grown outside the city and farms. They didn't get all that much of a hearing. It wasn't easy for them. They tried and they tried, and it was tough. I do think the pandemic began to change everything. And I think you know why. I mean, clearly it was that the grocery store model, which was the main reason why people were hesitant to change, it was just so easy to go down to the corner grocery store and get the things you need, or go to the supermarket or large box stores, get the supplies you needed, often fresh and good supplies. But with the pandemic, they also became very expensive supplies. Also, they became somewhat constrained. A lot of the food was not able to get to us because the global transportation system was receiving a number of different problems and blockages at trying to get food to various locations around the world. So the pandemic began to change. We noticed this at the food bank almost right away. Although people were still donating to the food bank, they were talking about how much pricier things had become and how kind of upset that they were that during a time of a national health emergency, a global health emergency, some were taking that opportunity to raise the prices of groceries. And for some, it put them out of reach. They couldn't do that and also pay the rent. So they began to come to the food bank to see what help they could get. But it had become obvious to all of us, the whole community, that the grocery store model, as wonderful as it has been for decades, pretty well since World War II, was running kind of short on supplies and also was testing the patience of average Londoners, even store managers, local store managers who were trying to get food so they could get it out to people. It was really difficult. Years ago with the food bank, I would say 10 years ago, the food bank had about 25% of its food was fresh that it gave out. Now it's 56%. Pretty well all of that coming from average Londoners and London organizations. And just in their giving patterns, in their donation patterns, they are beginning more and more to prioritize fresh food for people. It makes sense. Fresh food is harder to do, to pick up. We have to store it, have to get it out to other places in a timely fashion, and people have to pick it up at food banks or social agencies and try to get it home in time to put it in the fridge. There are challenges that go along with that, but despite all of that, Londoners have begun to make a statement that they're looking for an alternative. They're not trying to get rid of the grocery store model, but they want something that's local, that's fresh, it's nutritious, doesn't have all the pesticides in it, doesn't have all the environmental costs that come with shipping things worldwide. They wanted something that was more immediate, something they could get, but also something that was affordable. Now, we at the food bank work a lot with local farmers. They talk as well just about the difficulties that they have trying to get that food to markets. In many ways, some of the farmers said that it was easier for them to get their crops overseas than it was for them to get it into markets in London. That's a pattern that we have seen developed over the years here in London. And it's troubling because as the cost went up and the environmental damage became more and more known about all of this, there still wasn't that pressure to create a different model. Well, now there is. The Curb Hunger Food Drive was just part of a trend that's been going on for the last number of years that talks about how things have to be changed. Now, think about it. Even during the Hunger Drive, there were things like community gardens that people could go to, people growing food in their backyards. I've seen a lot of small greenhouses beginning to grow and develop around the community. There's also like the large greenhouse at the food bank. But it goes farther than all of that. Places like Western University and Fanshawe and others are doing all sorts of research and experimenting with different growing models, models that bring the food closer to home, that have it here, easier to deliver, easier to consume, and is also just really nutritious. I think that's fascinating. Groups like Urban Roots, The Patch, Growing Chefs, and others have put high priority on this, and now they've begun to break through. The opening press conference for the Curb Hunger Food Drive was not held at the food bank. It's the first time in a long time. It was held at Urban Roots as a statement. It's something in which we are saying that it's time for a change. People are not looking to go all the way across to another way of having buying patterns. It's more about that they just want to be able to have choices, choices that are local and nutritious and hopefully affordable. I think we're starting to move in that direction. School classrooms are like that. There's more and more school classrooms that are just interested in how to grow food, what's in food, what's that all about anyway. And then there's also, like in the curriculum, and some Londoners took part in helping the province to prepare that curriculum, the idea of teaching kids in schools. Don't just think of food as something that comes into a grocery store and you just go and pick it up. Think of food as a local resource, something that you can not only purchase, but you could actually grow and select what it is that you are growing. Yeah, yeah. London is rounding a corner. Now the secret is to try to get to the decision makers, to get them to understand that this is not, pardon the pun, but it's not, it's a grassroots movement. It's not some big corporate decision to make to go and do something and put a product on the shelves. This is thousands of Londoners who are deciding that rather than just speaking up and saying that they want to changes, decide to make some of that change themselves right beneath their feet. And they began to grow their own food. It was pretty special. The food bank, in partnership with the London and District Construction Workers and Fanshawe College, has also announced the Farm in the Box initiative. So this is like an urban farm, 5 different containers that will grow in this protected environment. And there's a lot of reasons why we are doing that. We feel that there's a need for more and more of that in the city. And also our agencies, we help a lot of agencies. They're also saying that they don't necessarily have all the facilities to house large portions of fresh food. But is there a way that we could grow it in a timely fashion, harvest it, and get it to those agencies on an as needed basis? So that's what we're working on. But there's one key that's really important to all of that. We've talked to nutritionists and researchers and others, and it's important to recognize that the food that comes from the farm in a box will be the freshest food in London. It won't be contaminated. It's built like something like a bit of a mild or light hazmat area. People have to be very, very careful about bringing contaminants in. So it means that this food will be fresh. It will be large. It will grow 24/7 in these models that are being developed. We've already started. We have a lab. We've been working on it for months. And pretty soon you'll start to see these things go to Fanshawe College and be grown there. And that food will end up going to other agencies and to people that really need it. But what London is saying is, yes, they want fresher food. But what they're saying is they want the really good stuff to go to the people that really need it, the people that can't afford much in the way of food anyway. That's what the food bank is trying to do. That's what these other groups are trying to do as well. How do we get our local city policymakers to listen and make a change? I think they're trying, to be honest with you. We've had discussions with them, as have others. But it's so slow, and it's not going nearly as fast as food insecurity is growing. It is time for that change. And unfortunately, policymakers, by trying to protect us to make sure that we've got safe and sound food, at the same time have not adapted to the fact that Londoners already know about that. They're pursuing it and they're working on that. and they're working on it in their own backyards. They're working on it in their post-secondary institutions. They're working at it in their classrooms, and they're working at it in their social agencies that they are trying to support. Imagine that the best food in the city coming out of the farm in the box will go to homeless people. That's important. It will go to others. Almost 20% of the people that that are coming to us now are people that work. Almost 40% of the people that come to social agencies actually live above the poverty line. In other words, they work, maybe minimum wage, whatever. They're doing their absolute best, but they can't afford medicines and food and the skyrocketing prices of rent. They just can't get it all done. It's impossible, especially those with families. So they're looking for new alternatives and better ways. I think that's the right way to be. We would really encourage all Londoners, as we did at the press conference a couple of weeks ago, and that's with Urban Roots, the Patch, and others, to try to say, look at policymakers, this is where we are at. Now, we're not just at this point because it's ideological or environmentalists or just like that. Many of us can't afford it. We can't afford the present system of what we have. We want the ability to grow our own. And that's going to take things like bylaw changes, funding and supports, research, but it's going to require a city that understands that if it's going to have a future, it's going to have to be a green one, because we can't afford to do it the way that we have been doing it. The increase in homelessness, the increase in people looking to food banks, the increase in all sorts of people who are living now in food insecurity, huge amounts, millions amounts of Canadians, millions of them are having trouble getting nutritious food. That's where we come in, every single one of us, whether it's helping the food bank or these other groups, or whether it's growing a garden in your backyard or just a few lettuces that you want to drop off to people that need it. All of those things are important, but this is not an anti-poverty thing that we are talking about here. We're not talking about, well, we'll change all of these things around just so we're able to get food to the food insecure. We need a food economy. We need something that is really driving London. So it's a really important part of what we do, not just for overseas. We've got very rich farmland around us, and a lot of that never comes here at all. So it's time to get that in here, and it's time to revolutionize ourselves in how we do it. This is not an anti-poverty effort. This is a quality of life effort. The ability of people to put on their table the freshest food that's possible, and it just so happened to grow just a few kilometers away, or in the backyard, or in a greenhouse in a neighborhood somewhere. That's what this is about. So when I say London is rounding a corner, the data is there to show it. There's all of these new initiatives going on. You can see it on social media. You can see it in traditional media. People are wanting alternatives. And they're seeming to say that we want the kind of alternative that's the most nutritious, gives people who are struggling the best quality of food available, but also allows us the ability to have our kids be taught in school how important growing and planting and vegetables, flour, all those things are, but also that we have a local economy that's largely driven by issues related to food, whether it's a hospitality center, whether it's markets, whatever it is. We've all got an opportunity here to do it, but we have to keep pressing, and get through to the policymakers that the time has come. We want to do the work. We're not looking to them to do it, but they need to change bylaws and do other things that give people the chance to grow more urban agriculture in London, to have crops in this city that can be utilized. It has to be done safely, so we understand there's all the standards. But that time has not only come, it's already passed to a certain degree. Londoners have been doing this now for the last 10 years really seriously. And many Londoners prior to that were trying to get policymakers to make that change. Well, we're here. It's passed. The Curb Hunger food drive is passed now, just by a few days, and Londoners gave more than they ever did before. They're more generous than they ever have been, despite the times that they're living in. You're not dealing with a community that's a whole bunch of penny pinchers. You're dealing with a community that really wants to get out there, to collaborate, to cooperate with other groups, and to live in a city that's primarily green, a garden city, a place where food is just exchanged on a regular basis, really good food that's grown here locally and consumed locally. It's also researched and protected locally.